What's the emergency?
No problem. All units are
Hi,
by
I'm at the corner of Pleasant Hill and John Young Freeway.
1519 East 18.
Welcome back to Crime Solvers Central, where we dig into some of the most haunting, unsolved cases in America. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jace. Today, we're diving into a case that has baffled investigators, armchair detectives, and entire communities for nearly a decade. The brutal and mysterious murder of Missy Bevers in Midlothian, Texas.
Missy was a beloved fitness instructor, a wife, and mother of 3 daughters. On April 18, 2016, she went to Creekside Church of Christ early in the morning to set up for one of her boot camp classes. What should have been a normal day turned into tragedy when she was found brutally murdered inside the church.
And what makes this case so chilling is not just the act itself, but it was the bizarre surveillance footage police released. A figure in what looked like SWAT-style tactical gear wandering the church's halls with a hammer, casually breaking glass, opening doors almost as if they were waiting. That footage is burned into people's memories. It's eerie, unsettling, and to this day, no one's been arrested.
Okay, so let's lay down the timeline before we get into the theories. Missy had moved her fitness class indoors due to bad weather. She had suffered multiple puncture wounds to the head and to the chest. Investigators said those were consistent with the tools the suspect was carrying.
And the suspect's behavior on camera, it looked peculiar. They weren't rushing, they weren't ransacking the place like a typical burglar might. It looked deliberate but strange, almost staged. And investigators even debated whether the suspect was a man or a woman. They didn't know. At first they thought male, and then they suggested the gait looked feminine. Later on, an FBI podiatrist concluded that you couldn't really determine gender from just the walk of somebody alone.
Yes, but that walk, though, was very distinct and unforgettable. The suspect seemed to be limping. It's like their right foot was turned outwards, and they occasionally would lean up to the wall as to, say, steady themselves. The police said that it might have been a temporary condition, though, or maybe even a result of them carrying heavy items.
And speaking of gear, the outfit itself was striking. It was strange. Head-to-toe black tactical clothing, a police-marked vest, gloves, and a helmet. Now, it looked official just from the cameras, but experts and investigators couldn't determine whether it was authentic SWAT gear or if it was just a costume. Either way, it was almost certainly meant to intimidate.
What also adds to the mystery is the cameras in the parking lot of the church weren't working that night. The cameras inside were, but just enough to raise questions, but not enough to give us a positive identification. And then there's the strange car. You have the 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima, or maybe it's an Infiniti G37 that's seen circling in a nearby parking lot just hours earlier. The driver has never come forward.
So here we are, almost a decade later, with no confirmed suspects and no arrests. We have a community that's still holding vigils, still raising awareness, and now offering rewards that total up to over $150,000 to this day for information.
And yet, the case remains unsolved, which brings us to the big question of the night. What really happened in the church that night? And who killed Missy Bevers?
Surveillance video shows someone dressed in tactical gear with a jacket marked police. A helmet and gloves help hide the intruder's identity.
There's no easy way to deal with what has happened. It's hard.
So, Charlie, let's start with the obvious question. Do we think Missy Bevers was targeted, or was this some sort of burglary that escalated out of control?
Well, that's been the central debate from the beginning. Police initially floated burglary because the suspect was smashing glass, opening doors, kind of giving, like a breaking and entering vibe. But then nothing was stolen. Missy's purse or iPad, everything was left of worth untouched. If the burglary was the motive, then why come dressed in full tactical gear at 4 a.m. in a church?
Exactly. It all feels too deliberate, too staged. And just the night before, Missy herself had posted on Facebook that the class would be held inside because of storms. That wasn't common. Normally, she held class in the parking lot, and whoever killed her might have seen that post and then adjusted their plan.
Which raises the question, was someone following her online? We know that investigators looked into some creepy messages that she received on LinkedIn from an unidentified man. Those messages were described as being strange or even flirtatious, which is even more strange to me. And maybe that's why they were described as strange, because those aren't typically the types of message you would receive on LinkedIn. This crossed a line over into possible obsession.
Now, that is entirely possible. The police did interview at least one man that she was talking to on LinkedIn. He said that it was just light flirting and nothing was serious, but we don't really know that for sure. That's always tricky because people don't always tell the full story.
And we can't ignore that her personal life was a bit complex. There's been documented financial struggles, looks like some marital issues, even mentions of outside relationships, some possible infidelity going on there. That doesn't mean that her husband or family was involved. Brandon was out of the state on a fishing trip, and Randy, her father-in-law, was in California. Both of them had alibis that checked out, but it does open the door for the idea that someone close to Missy, maybe a secret relationship, could be tied in.
Yeah, and let's talk about Randy, the father-in-law, just for a moment. There was that infamous bloody shirt. So 4 days after the murder, he takes a shirt to the dry cleaners and the employee there notices blood on it. That did set off alarms until testing later confirmed that it was dog blood from a fight between his pets. So it was totally unrelated. But that initial suspicion still hangs in the air whenever people discuss this case.
Exactly. And then there's the suspect's gait, that unusual walk. People have pored over that video for years, trying to decide whether they're male or female, if they're young or old, if they're actually injured or if they are healthy. Some even thought that it looked staged, like the killer wanted people to think that they were injured and so they walked oddly.
And then what about the car? The Nissan Altima, or possibly it was an Infiniti. It was seen circling the SWFA outdoor parking lot around 2 a.m. That driver has never come forward or been identified. They circle, turn their lights on and off, even park for a little bit, and then they leave. Was that the suspect, or was it just a random insomniac?
I mean, given the timing, it feels connected. If you're planning a murder, you might want to case the area first. That lot is close to the church, and the person may have been watching. Yet police say that the driver isn't necessarily a suspect, just someone that they want to talk to. Still, nearly a decade later, no one has identified them.
And here's another detail to discuss: the tactical gear. Some experts believe that it wasn't even real SWAT gear, just a costume that was thrown together from stores or even online. But whoever it was, they knew that it would hide their identity completely. They had a helmet, gloves, a vest. It all leaves no forensic evidence, and that suggests that this was planned.
Agreed. And think about their demeanor. They weren't frantic, they weren't hurried or in a rush. They calmly walked through the church for almost 30 minutes before Missy arrived. That's chilling. That feels like someone waiting for her.
So all of this added context makes me believe that this wasn't random. This was targeted. They knew Missy's schedule, they knew that she would be setting up early that morning, and they came there to kill her.
But then comes the counterpoint. Why in public? Why in a church where people would be arriving in less than an hour? So why risk being seen, being interrupted or caught on camera? If they wanted her gone, there were far less risky opportunities.
That is true. Some argue that it could have been meant to look like a burglary gone wrong, or an elaborate cover. The suspect smashing glass, the poking around doors, even the way that they walked, it all looked like a performance. Maybe a way to lead investigators down the wrong path.
And let's not forget Brandon's perspective. He said in a recent interview that he believed that the murder was random. That's interesting because most people, including law enforcement, lean towards targeted. So why would her husband think otherwise?
Maybe it's hope. Maybe it's self-preservation. Maybe he just genuinely believes that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But statistically, crimes like these are almost never random.
Yeah, that's what makes this case so haunting. Every piece of evidence seems to point in multiple directions all at the same time. The LinkedIn messages, the family suspicions, the car, the gate, the tactical gear. It all just seems to create more questions than answers.
And all of that is why nearly a decade later, people are still talking about it. People are still holding vigils, podcasts are still covering it, and rewards just keep growing because the killer is still out there.
9 years ago today, a North Texas mother was killed inside a Midlothian church, and to this day, no one's been arrested. On April 18, 2016, Missy Bevers showed up to Creekside Church just before 4:30 a.m. up there for a setup for a Camp Gladiator fitness class. Now, what she didn't know was someone was already inside. You can see on surveillance video someone dressed in SWAT-style police gear roaming the building. They'd been there for at least half an hour waiting, and police believe this was not random.
So here we are, nearly 10 years later, and the murder of Missy Bevers remains unsolved. 45-year-old mother, wife, fitness instructor, and friend, brutally taken from her family and her community.
And despite thousands of tips, national media coverage, and even that eerie surveillance footage, the killer has still never been caught. It's one of those cases that just eats away at you because the answers have to be out there. Someone knows something.
And that's why it's so important to keep Missy's story alive. Every year, her community holds vigils and awareness events. Rewards have grown to more than $150,000 for information leading to an arrest. And Midlothian police, they say that they're still looking for leads, and those leads are still coming in.
If you're listening to this and you've heard something about this case, even the smallest detail, it could matter. Maybe you remember someone acting strange that week. Maybe you recognize that distinct walk. Maybe you saw a Nissan Altima or Infiniti back in the area in 2016. Even if it feels insignificant to you, it could be the missing piece that investigators need.
Tips can be submitted directly to Midlothian Police or Ellis County Crime Stoppers and here at Crime Solvers Central. We also encourage you to share Missy's story, post about it, talk about it, keep the pressure on. The awareness matters.
And if you want to help us keep producing episodes like this, you can subscribe to Crime Solver Central here on YouTube, share the podcast with friends, and visit our website where we highlight resources for each case.
Missy Bevers deserves justice. Her family deserves closure, and her community deserves answers.
We'll leave you with this. If you know anything at all, no matter how small, please reach out. Be the reason that this case finally gets solved.
For Crime Solvers Central, I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jace. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and stay loud.